introduce our next speaker. You may know him as a representative, but he began his advocacy for civil rights at the age of 18, when he became one of the first people to set foot on a Greyhound bus that was headed into the Deep South. At the time, he was an engineering student at Cornell. In June 1961, after pulling into the bus station in Jackson, Mississippi, Bob Filner was arrested along with his co-riders for disturbing the peace and inciting a riot. He refused to post bond for his release and remained incarcerated for 2 months. His record on gun control is as follows. He voted no on prohibiting product misuse lawsuits on gun manufacturers. He voted no on prohibiting suing gun makers and sellers for gun misuse. He voted no on decreasing gun waiting period from 3 days to 1. He's rated F by the NRA. Restricting the show sales. And with that, I would like to welcome Mayor Bob Filner to speak.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. It's not sort of hard for a nerd and for an academic to have an F and be proud of it, but I guess we are now. So thank you for that applause. We have got to have meetings like this, of course, all over our city, all over our nation, to show that the public wants a common sense response to the violence that we have seen in this country, and not let the NRA determine the context of this debate. And so the fact that you're here is really an important statement. It gives every public official, thank you for being here on behalf of Scott Peters, it gives every public official more confidence, more courage, other parts of the body, that they should be able to withstand this attack that's obviously always there from the NRA. So you need to be there, and you need to find all kinds of ways to say you're there. You know, traditionally you write to your Congress people, and you've got to keep doing that, but that's also the city council and the state legislatures. Everybody's got to hear this. And I'll suggest a whole approach to the what I call the infrastructure of public opinion in a minute, but I am a member of the Mayors Against the Gun Violence. So we are talking about, and we are in the midst of I think a really interesting tactic that all the mayors are inventorying where their own police departments, for example, buy guns and buy ammunition, because once we have all the mayor's inventory, we see which gun manufacturers are in fact standing in the way of legislation or lobbying against it. We can say we're going to have a collective boycott or whatever. I mean, it's a different format that has been taken before. To have, you know, those of us who have to do this for police action, maybe we can exert our pressure in terms of where those purchases are bought, just as one example. I actually, by the way, I met Dr. King when I was 13 years old. And I committed myself to nonviolent social change. And my whole career has been around that, so it's no accident that I'm here today, because this is the way that we ought to proceed as a society. And it just doesn't make any common sense at all not to have background checks. It doesn't make any common sense at all not to ban assault weapons. I mean, we know this. This is just, it's almost, you know, it's almost, I mean, it's just common sense. And we have to say to Wayne Pierre over at the NRA that, you know, he says the only way to deal with a bad man with a gun is for a good person, I guess he would. Did he say man? A good person with a gun. No, there are other ways, Mr. LaPierre. For example, you can make it harder for the bad guy to get the gun in the first place. Background checks and bans of certain weapons are part of it. We can't guarantee zero, But we can guarantee it to be much harder for them to get those kind of weapons with that kind of background check. We can, in fact, through a more healthy society, make nonviolence a part of what we are as a society. I mean, with mental health, far more comprehensive policy toward mental health in our schools and in our society as well. We need to become a more healthy society. And the statistics show that a good person with a gun is more likely to inflict violence on a loved one in a situation of frustration or temporary violence or even insanity, as it were. So a gun in the hand of a good person might be used against another good person. I mean, the statistics are very clear on that. Most of us don't want to have guns in our household because it ends up being harm on our loved ones. So this is sort of common sense. So I never understood all the political hostility toward it. But we have to organize as a campaign, and I'm asking all of you and the organization, to look at this. Yeah, you got to lobby all your public officials, but the public officials really have a very refined antenna toward public opinion. That is, if public opinion is one way and they're against it, they know that. And so we have to take the aim of organizing against or educating public opinion. And it's a lot harder, by the way, than to write to a congressperson. But it's a lot more effective in the long run. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, we have to be out there, for example, at all the places where people meet in organizations and stuff. The PTAs, the service clubs, the church groups. Wherever people are for a regular meeting, you've got to have a speaker there. And they need speakers, believe me. Every week they have meetings. You need to be there, and you're going to say, well, it's so hard to deal with the Rotary Club here or this group there. Well, I got news for you. If you can't convince them, you ain't going to be able to convince the congressperson. Because the congressperson or the other legislator is going to all those events to get elected and to make speeches. They have to hear, not from us, but from the Rotary Club. How can you support this? It doesn't make any sense. So we have to be going to all of those kinds of things where politicians feel or get their public opinion. They get public opinion by going to all this stuff, so we have to be there in advance of them. Letters to the editor are really important because I'll tell you a little secret. When I was a congressman, I read the letters to the editor before I read my own mail because it's reflective of a larger population. When someone writes a letter, they're generally, expressing the opinion of lots of people, and besides, lots of people read it. So, and I'm not just talking about, the alleged newspaper UT. I'm talking about every local paper. We should have lists. I mean, it's hundreds when you get to it. Weekly papers, monthly papers, union papers, church newsletters, neighborhood newsletters, ethnic papers. All those print letters to the editor. And all the politicians read those newspapers. So if everything they pick up has a letter from you, then they're getting a sense about what public opinion is. That's how you influence. Everything they pick up has to have this sense, because what they're picking up has the opposite sense, because the other guys know how to do this. They know how to do this, and they get trained, and they pay people to do it. We have to do it with our own sweat and blood. And it's much harder, and it's frustrating. Because you run into people who will have a completely different sense and argue with you and all that, or make it difficult, but you got to do it, because that's what is determining public opinion. The talk shows are very difficult. Call them up anyway. If they don't want to take your call, they like to take because they like to argue with you, but I mean, any 20 people in this room, if I don't know, if the Hedgecock show doesn't take your call, you could tie up their lines just like. That is, I mean, we got to have I'm serious that we got to talk to even the guys, especially the guys who don't believe us, agree with us. I mean, the talk shows have got to be talked to. I bet you have not taken advantage of something that's in the law. Every TV station has got to give a certain, has got to make a minute or two of time for any organization that wants to talk about a public issue. They have to give you 2 minutes. Well, and everybody's, well, I don't know if I can, I don't know what, but there's people in this room right now who would be good on television, but it's not, even if you weren't, you become better when you do it. But they would be running a thing about gun violence every day, 3 times a day. All you have to do is go down to the television station and say, I have a 1-minute statement I want to make on gun violence, or let's say gun safety, and what's going on with assault weapons, and what's going on with background checks. They have to do it. We never take advantage. We should be looking at them every time someone turns on the TV station. They should see this public, they'll call it public service now, so it's something like that, I forget the name. They are required to do this. Most groups never take advantage of it. Because it's, I don't know, somehow it seems beyond us to be able to do the intelligence. It's really simple. You go in the studio, they film you for 60 seconds. And there's some people, I'm sure there's PR experts in this room that could do it. But even if you weren't, just talking from the heart is also very effective. And you get better at it, believe me, you get better at it. So we have to look at affecting the, what I call the infrastructure of public opinion, because that's what is most effective in influencing every public official at every level. Because all of the, whether you're a school board member or a state assemblyman or the congressman or the mayor, are doing all these things. They're going to the service clubs, they're going to the church groups, they're reading the letters together, they listen to the talk shows, and they, what was the last thing I said? Oh, and they're watching television. And they love to see their ads, but we're not in a campaign season now, so you should take advantage of it. There's plenty of time for these guys to run those, and they're free, and it's a responsibility. By law, they have to do it. So I think we should get on the offensive here. Not let the NRA, just dominate all this stuff, and get the opinion on, and it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. But we have an obligation to our children to make the society less violent. We have an obligation to our own families. We have an obligation to our society. San Diego could be a much more healthier society, right? If we didn't have gun violence. Well, we all recognize that. Let's convince the rest of the public to do it. I need your help. I can't do it alone. Believe me, it's public opinion, not just the few leaders. The leaders have got a responsibility to speak out. And there are mayors all over the country that are doing this. I would try to guide the way if you could do it. Try to get a resolution from the city council. That's not easy. That the city council has announced this, but you got to try it. If we can't get the city council, we ain't going to get the Congress people, believe me. And you are there's people here probably from each council district. Go see your person, even if he or she has expressed some reservations in the past. Get them to understand that, the recent events have changed things, have changed public opinion, have made it easier for them, and we have to give them the backbone to accomplish it. So thank you very much for doing this, for giving us, for making it, you got to make it harder for the people who have been against change, make it harder for them to continue voting against change. And thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mayor Filner, and for the good discussion. As we wrap up, we do have a slide to show some information, but I just want to say we are very glad that you came here today in response to this call to action. And a very special thanks to the speakers, and especially to Ms. Tracy Swafford and Mr. McCoy for sharing their personal stories with us. And I would like to just ask if we could just take one moment of silence to honor their beautiful children whose lives were cut short, and the other victims that have suffered from gun violence as well. You would just join me for a moment of silence. And please be sure to fill in your contact information if you'd like to be part of our mailing list. And you can also email us at csandiego@gmail.com, for People for a Safe Community.